Welcome into another edition of the In the Money podcast for KeenelandSelect.com. I'm Leach, along with Keeneland's Director of Mutuals and Simulcasting, Jim Goodman, and we're going to take a look at the Pick 6 on Saturday at Santa Anita. Starts with a Grade 1 stake, the sixth race, the Grade 1 Kilrow Mile on Big Cap Day at Santa Anita. And in here, we've got horses that we've picked before in races over the last year, Balabali, Bolo, others. Who do you like in a Kilrow Mile, Jim?
Yeah, some of them came through and some of them didn't. But I went back and watched Bolo's race in the Arcadia at this distance with Pratt up and gets Mike Smith today. I think Bolo, if he steps forward from that race, he's a nice start to the Pick 6 here. This is a nice field. There's only 7 horses in here, and you can make a case for 3 or 4 of them that with that class and with current form that they could win. Balabali is the other one that I would think has a shot. Ran behind Flamboyant and obviously last out. But if you went back and watched Bolo, obviously got a really easy lead in the Arcadia, even though the splits were fairly quick, 45 and 3 and 109. And he set right off. Obviously had every reason to win the race, and Bolo got it by neck, and that was pretty impressive. So I'm going to pick Bolo on that race. Balabali has a shot, ran behind Midnight Storm, also 2 back. So Midnight Storm is one of the horses you have to include in here, but coming off a little bit of a layoff since November. And my third choice would probably be Ohm, just on back class. But in the race that Bolo won in the Arcadia, he had a great trip and never closed an inch on the leader. So I don't think he's as good as Bolo is right now. So Bolo would be my top choice here, the 4-horse.
Yeah, I'm kind of along the same lines as you are. If I were doing a win bet in the race, I'd probably play Balabali because I think he'll be a little better price. But that one and Bolo, and I'll be happy with those two moving forward. The Pick 6, Bolo's last race, like you mentioned, was very, very impressive. This is a horse that was really highly regarded as a 3-year-old last year. They tried to make him into a Derby horse, and that didn't work. And then they were really high on him as a grass prospect, and then for whatever reason he went to the sidelines in the summer. So I think he could be poised for a big year. So Bolo the 4, Balabali the 3 are the 2 I would use. The second leg, if I were playing a Pick 6 ticket for Saturday at Santa Anita, the races I'm going to have to spread in, so I would have to find a place to single 1 or 2, and this would be one of them for me. I like Exaggerator a lot in the Grade 2 San Felipe Derby Prep at a mile on the 16th for 3-year-olds. 98 Buyer in his 3-year-old debut, and that was second to Nyquist. And for a second, I thought he was going to run by Nyquist, and then just kind of hung there. And Nyquist is very good, obviously headed on to the Florida Derby. So I like Exaggerator a lot. I will score and More Spirit of the others that I like in there, but for the purposes of a Pick 6 ticket, I would take a single here on Exaggerator. How about you?
I was ready to pick Exaggerator as a single, and for the same reasons that you mentioned. I mean, he ran behind Nyquist. That's certainly no big issue. He ran a length and a half behind him, and at the top of the stretch, I thought he was going to win the race. And Nyquist held him off, to his credit, and it's going to be interesting to see Nyquist in the Florida Derby in a couple weeks. But Exaggerator is still my top pick, but I think More Spirit has a shot. He was never going to lose to Robert B. Lewis, and I think they left a whole lot in the tank here. He moved up from an 88 Buyer his last race at Los Alamitos to a 93 from an 85 the race before, so that progression is 85, 88, 93. He steps forward a little bit, and he's right there with Exaggerator. Exaggerator's been tested a little bit more, won the Delta Jackpot and finished second to Nyquist, but I think More Spirit was pretty impressive in the R.B. Lewis, and like I said, he was never going to lose that race. He was very confidently ridden by Gary Stevens. He rides him back. The other horse that you didn't mention, and I didn't like at the beginning, but I went back and watched the Cal Cup Derby at Santa Anita with Smoky Image. He won that so easily that I think you can disregard the mediocre Buyer figures. He's running the 80s the last 5 races. He's 6 for 6. And they put Espinoza on him there last race. He wins by 8.5. He could have won by 20 if he wanted to. And so I think that Buyer figure is understated for that track, and I think he ran a much better race than that. So I give Smoky Image a chance here, too. I would take Exaggerator on top, but I would use More Spirit and Smoky Image in Pick 6.
The 8th race is a maiden race for 3-year-olds at a mile on the turf. And for the purposes of a Pick 6, it's kind of depends on your budget. I couldn't afford enough to cover everybody I would want in a pick six ticket for this day in these races, because I want to spread even more in a couple of the upcoming races. So I would, if you made me play a pick six ticket, then I would single Beach Patrol in the 8th race and just take a stand there, but I wouldn't feel real confident doing it. I like Hello Bourbon. Sunset Arch has got a really nice turf pedigree, could jump up and run well. The 5, Clear the Way. So I kind of like them in that order. So it's really just kind of determined by your own budget. But Beach Patrol is a horse that was well bet in both starts on the eastern half of the country, and now shifts across the country into Phil D'Amato's barn. And trainer does very well in that circuit, so I wouldn't be surprised if this horse moved forward. So Beach Patrol, I think, has got a big shot to win this, but I certainly wouldn't feel very confident singling him yet. That's kind of what I'd have to do in terms of if I wanted to play a pick six on this day. So that's kind of how I look at that maiden race. How about you?
Yeah, this game would be easy if we had unlimited bankrolls, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it?
We need to borrow some money from Coach Cal. Maybe he could fund us and play this pick six for real. This race, I wrote down 6 horses, and I don't like to take 6 horses in a 12-horse field, so I narrowed it down to 4. If I were playing a pick six ticket and investing a lot of money, there's not many throwouts here, only a couple that I saw. I like Beach Patrol as well, but there are question marks there. Going to a new barn, hadn't run since December, and he did well on the fairground turf, but that's a lot different turf course than he's going to find at Santa Anita. It's going to be a lot firmer at Santa Anita, so you really don't know how he's going to transfer his form, so that would be a question mark with me, although his numbers are good. I like Clear the Way and Hello Bourbon that ran right together. Both of them closed well and got beat by 4.5 lengths in a maiden special weight first time out down the hill. So they're going to the mile course, and maybe stretching out would help each one of them. So I would use Hello Bourbon, the 1, Clear the Way, the 5, Beach Patrol, the 7, and the 9 horse is the one that you've got to put in. If you skip that last race when they stretched him out to a mile and an eighth, if you go back to Santa Anita race on January 23rd, he got a 75 buyer, got beat by 0.5 length in a maiden special weight, was right there with a horse that came back and won. The horse that finished in front of him won, so it was a key race with 2 winners out of the top 4. So he's dropping back to a mile. He tried him a mile and an eighth, and he got the lead, and he faded. So I like that 2-back issue. So I would use Tristan's trilogy in here as well. So I would go 1, 5, 7, 9, pick 6.
9th race is the Grade 2 San Carlos. It's a 7-furlong sprint for 4-year-olds and up, and I had trouble narrowing it down here. Who did you land on?
I narrowed it down, and it's just like when you talk about multi-leg wagers, and I've gone deep in a couple of the early ones, so you got to find a couple of singles late, and my single here is Kobe's Back. Kobe's Back came off a 4-month layoff after the Breeders' Cup Sprint, where he was never really in contention. He got off slow, and he was never in the race, but he only got beat 4.5 by Run Happy. So he was, he was right there with the horses that ran second and third. So he came back in the Palos Verdes, and he broke dead last and closed like a freight train and got up by 0.5 length. And I think if he comes back and improves off that race, he's going to be tough to handle here. That race fell apart. The speed was 44.2 for the half and 108.3, so it was going to set up for a closer. But he beat Saludos Amigos that day, and that's a nice feather in his cap by itself, because Saludos Amigos is very tough. San Onofre and the 5-horse Cautious Giant, I can make a case for them, but they could hook up in a speed duel, and that would even make Kobe's Back a little bit better to take. And Wild Dude is also a closer with tons of back class, so there's a chance that it does fall apart, and Kobe's Back and Wild Dude, the 3, are going down the stretch, and it's a head bob between them. But I'm going to single Kobe's Back in the pick 6.
That was my second pick in here. I ended up, for a win pick, I would go to the 5, Cautious Giant. I like the 2 for 3 at 7 furlongs, third start off a layoff. But I like Cautious Giant. For my pick 6 ticket, I would also have to use Kobe's Back. And then the 3 inside horses, 3 Wild Dude, 2 Coastline, and 1 Calculator. I used 5 in there. So that was a tough one for me to narrow down. And I think that's a race where you're going to have probably, I'm guessing, pretty tight finish. You're going to have 2 or 3 of them at least close together coming down to the wire on that one. The 10th race is the Santa Anita Handicap. Grade 1, 1.25 miles, 4-year-olds and up, race with so much history. You got FNX going to be a big favorite here, shipping across country off a runner-up finish in the Breeders' Cup Classic. He meets horses that have already run over this track. Who did you like?
Yeah, I'd like to see FNX have had a prep race. He hasn't run since the Clark, and he came back out of the Breeders' Cup Classic and won the Clark Handicap. There's a question mark about FNX here. I think he's going to be the big favorite just on his name and because he finished second to American Pharaoh in the Classic. But I don't think he's a cinch here, and I would use him, but I would also use a very lightly raced horse for Doug O'Neill named Donworth. He came back off a long layoff in the San Antonio and just got beat by Opportunity and Imperative, and he was right there at the wire with both of them. And those are two nice horses. Imperative is in this field as well, so you got to give him a shot. But I think Donworth has a lot more upside. I think he only raced 4 times as a 3-year-old, and he comes out his first 4-year-old race and gets a 104 buyer in a very competitive race with some nice horses, and I think he can take a big step up here, and he might surprise some of the bigger names in here. And I think FNX is the top choice, but Donworth would be my second choice. I would also put Imperative in a bigger ticket just because he lost the Grade 2 San Antonio by like a whisker. If he takes a step forward, he can win, but the one thing that's a big red flag for Imperative is he is 0 for 11 lifetime at Santa Anita, and it would be hard to imagine he wins his 12th start in a Grade 1 with a Santa Anita handicap. So I think Imperative is probably going to win second. He's got 8 seconds out of 29 lifetime with only 3 wins. Donworth is my long shot pick. FNX would be my choice.
I like Donworth a lot in here. That 104 buyer in the comeback race off a long layoff was impressive. Now this, of course, goes second off a layoff for O'Neill. And this horse was touted last year. It was in Graham Motion's barn. And off his maiden, they put him in the Lexington Stakes at Keeneland, and he ran well. So I think this is definitely a horse with a lot of ability. And off that big prep, I think he can win this while giving away a lot of experience to the other 2 horses I like, FNX and General A-Rod. I just couldn't throw out the Pletcher horse in here with a 105 buyer. But I would use 3, 4, and 5. But if I could actually be talked into singling Donworth if I had to narrow down the ticket. But I'm going to use 3, 4, and 5 for the pick 6 ticket in here. And then finally the 11th race, and I couldn't come up with a strong opinion here. This is the Twitter tourney race. If you play that particular bet for Keeneland Select, you have to pick the winners of 2 races in a row. And so it would be the Santa Anita Handicap and then this one. And I took Kiss and Scat, the 5 horse. I like Scat Daddies on the turf, and this horse has some upside, but just didn't have a strong opinion there. That's a very shaky win pick. I would also want to use Decked Out the 4, Nodiac the 7, Pacific Heat the 9, Jeremy's Legacy the 3, and Sutton Smile the 2. So I would want 6 of them here. How about you?
Well, I got down to trying to figure out how much money I was going to spend on this ticket that I'm going to give out. And if I single this race, it's a $96 ticket. So if I'm going to spend $96, I'm going to single Pacific Heat, the 9 horse. I think they found a home for her on the turf here. They tried her in the as a 2-year-old last year, ran in the Starlet and didn't run, and then she's been off since December. But she won her first 2 races on dirt by 13.5 and 5.5, and then she comes back on turf and wins by 5.25. So she's won 3 races by over 24 lengths. Did not run well in the Starlet, but was 2 to 1 in that race. So I think she's found a horse, found a home on the dirt, on the turf. I'll get my words right here in a minute, but a home on the turf with an 83 buyer. Moved up a little bit here to an 87, 88, and I think she wins this last race. At least that's what I'm saying for my pick 6. I would also use Kiss and Scat as my second choice. Hollendorfer's always tough. Don't know if she'll transfer that form from Golden Gate to Southern California, but she's won 2 in a row and has run 4 good races in a row. So Pacific Heat would be my single, and if you spend $192, I would go Kiss and Scat to 5 as the second choice.
So it's a challenging day to play the pick 6. As I said, I like the 2 horses in the first leg. I'd single Exaggerator. To try to get a manageable ticket, I'd single Beach Patrol, and then I'd want to use all 3 horses in the Santa Anita Handicap. So in those 9th and 11th races, just as deep as you could afford to go would be my advice. But the strongest opinions for me are in the Kilroe Mile with those 2 horses, the San Felipe with the Exaggerator, and then the Santa Anita Handicap with the 3 horse play there of Donworth, Chevrolet, Rod, and FNX. Best of luck with your wagers on Saturday. Big day at Santa Anita. Got the Derby Prep, the San Felipe in addition to the Big Cap. And then you've got a Derby Prep, an important one down at Tampa, was Brody's Cause, who was the favorite of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, makes his 3-year-old debut in that race, the Grade 2 Tampa Bay Derby. So a lot of great racing to play this weekend, and we'll be back to talk more about it next week on this edition of the In the Money podcast for KeenelandSelect.com.